What's up, and welcome to The Art of Being Well. I am a leading functional medicine doctor. We get to consult people around the world. We love them so much. And I'm a New York Times bestselling author. If you want to learn more about our clinical work, the telehealth center, and there's lots of free resources for you to be the healthiest version of you, all at, where is it at, my friends?
drwillcole.com.
We didn't plan that. Yeah, some of the wait lists for the different ways that we work with people around the world to optimize your health are now open. If they aren't open when you listen to this episode, join the wait lists, like the Better Belly Challenge, and Metabolic Recharge. Join the wait list if they aren't open, but see which ones are on the Become a Patient page at drwillcole.com. All right. About every month, we have episodes devoted to a clinical deep dive. So if you're a health nerd, if you're a wellness nerd, if you love functional medicine, nutrition, health sciences, these episodes are for you. So go back and listen to previous ones. They're about once a month. And this is the latest installment of Mental Health is Physical Health, which we lovingly call, that's the moniker for these episodes, because it's an integral part to our clinical work with our telehealth patients, is this bidirectional relationship between mental health and physical health, how physical health issues will impact mental emotional health, and how mental emotional health will impact physical health. So this crosstalk between mind and body. And we kind of give an insider's look at a functional medicine approach on different specific topics. We've covered a wide gamut of different health issues. So go back and listen to it if this is your thing, which it's our thing for sure. To help me out every episode, we have someone from the telehealth center that represents each side of that. Someone from the physical health side, someone from the mental emotional health side. On the mental emotional health side, we have Candace, who's our chief lead emotional wellness coach. What's up?
Hey, everybody.
I love the way you introduce Candace. I really do.
What am I not doing for you then?
The chief lead. No, I just,
Okay.
I don't need it. I'm just saying I love Candace.
She's fishing. She's fishing. And on the physical health side, we have the chief lead queen, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner.
And now I'm embarrassed. Okay.
So, we're we're part of the clinical team here, and actually on one-on-one consultations, you could see me, or you can also choose to see an FDNP or a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, which Andrea is on that team.
That's me.
And there's only three other people.
Yeah, but it's me and our
Emily, who you know from the
AMAs.
Ask Me Anything episodes, and then Megan,
who has been on Ask Me Anything.
Used to be on the Ask Me Anything episodes, but she moved out of HQ section.
It's okay.
So
it's
she's
right.
remote work, but yeah. And
Megan,
then,
if you're listening to this, we're not bitter at all that you moved across the state.
Yeah, that's all right. So let's jump into it. Today is a big topic. We're going to talk about forever chemicals, what they are. We're going to Myth bust.
What did I say?
Maybe
mist.
No.
Is that the latest in the scientific literature?
No, guys. Man, what was I saying?
Well,
my mouth just gave up on me.
A lot of the forever chemicals are aerosol in formation. So let's
Lord,
mist bust.
We're going to myth bust these babies.
We're going to myth bust.
Oh, Lord.
We're done now.
We're degrading.
Cut that out.
Cut that out. Yeah, Brooke, you can cut that out. Timestamp that out, Brooke. That would be great. I'll pick it up right here, Brooke. Thank you, Brooke. 3, 2, 1. We are going to myth bust forever chemicals, PFAS, everything you need to know. Just share this episode because the world needs to hear this information.
Yes.
Because you have to know what you're dealing with to do something about. This isn't going to be fear-mongering. This isn't going to be hyperbolic. This isn't going to be broad sweeping statements. I'm going to be as encouraging as possible and like, what the heck do you do with this stuff? Yeah. But let's dive in. Andrea's going to ask me questions. Candace, you can ask me questions. They're just going to pick my brain, and then we'll give some other components to this big topic as well.
So not to date myself, but you know how we always talk about the Roman Empire and like, what's your Roman Empire? What do you think about regularly every week? This is it for me. This is one of my Roman empires, as I'm constantly thinking about these forever chemicals. And do you like to say PFAS or PFAs? Like, how do you like?
PFAS works, or PFAs.
Yeah. So these forever chemicals, you just mentioned it. We're giving this weird abbreviation. Why don't you tell us, this is a two-part question. What are forever chemicals?
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm throwing this at you. And then how are they commonly encountered in our life?
And let me say this too. Andrea always says, do you want me to tell you the questions you're going to ask? I'm going to ask you. And I always say, no, surprise me.
No, he's literally like...
Makes it more interesting for the people and for me.
I walk in and I say, hey, I have my questions ready. Do you want me to walk through them with you? And he always says, no. And so I said,
not so
okay.
meanly, no. I'm nice about it. Like, no, just surprise me.
Yeah, it's a little tiny present that I'm preparing for
Yes,
you.
I love
And
it.
so my two-part question is,
Okay.
what are PFAS and how do we commonly encounter them?
Okay, so PFAS is an acronym that stands for per or polyfluoroalkyl substances, and they are a group of over 14, depending on the estimate that you look at, it's around 15,000 different chemicals. So they're not one compound, they're sort of a classification or a suite of chemicals. And they really are new to the human landscape. I mean, since the 1940s, really the 1950s, post World War II, basically, and the industrialization of chemicals, that a lot of this stuff was used during, like, shunted towards warfare. And there was a lot of development, accelerated development that happened during that time. But post World War II was it was put into our economy, and it is as I mentioned, it's a massive group of chemicals, and every year there's more and more studies coming out of PFAS being linked to such and such. So we can talk about that. I'm sure you'll ask me that. So that was the first part of your question.
Part two was, how do we commonly encounter them? Where are they?
Well, okay, this is where I'm when I said I'm not making broad sweeping statements, it's going to sound like I am, but I'm really not. So PFAS are ubiquitous. They are almost everywhere. Some places more than others. So the goal about this, if we're being really practical about this, is limiting exposure. Because to say you're going to avoid this entirely, you cannot live in a PFA-free bubble, plastic bubble, and think you're going to...
Well, the plastic bubble is a PFA.
Well, I said PFA-free. PFA-free plastic bubble.
Okay.
Because even that is a problem. But you cannot be, you can't avoid this entirely. But we can do a lot. And our body's amazingly resilient. You do not have to live in a sterilized, chemical-free vacuum to live a long, healthy, vibrant life. But we have to know what we're up against to do something about it. We have to be proactive and not reactive. And we have to be vigilant and not in an obsessive way, because stressing and obsessing about this stuff isn't good for your health either. But we still need to be informed and be empowered and be encouraged that we can make a difference. So because they are ubiquitous, they are found in pretty much, if you just go through the average person's life, it's in cars, it's in homes, it's in workplaces, it's in the supermarket. And the reason being is because, well, lots of plants and companies still are utilizing these. But I think the biggest thing to think about here is products that are stain resistant, water resistant, grease resistant. That sort of slickness, that repellent to grease, water, and stains is really largely PFAS. So that's in a lot of products. Like paper, think of paper wrapping at a fast food restaurant, PFAS. You look at water repellent clothing or stain repellent furniture or carpet. Makeup that is waterproof. Yeah, waterproof makeup, PFAS. So this is, if you think about that, the actual product itself, but then it gets into our water supply and it gets into our soil, and the food is grown in that soil. We are using water in many different ways in our life that's contaminated from PFAS. So it's in the product, it's in the development of these products, it is in the products themselves, and it's also the runoff, the containment of these chemicals are really hard to do. So they're everywhere in our world, and they're called forever chemicals because they are impervious to breakdown. It takes decades for them to slowly break down. They're recalcitrant. If they get in the body, it takes decades to clear out. They will clear out slowly, but it'll take decades. And same environmentally as well. And remember, this is a key part of these episodes. Mental health is physical health. It's the micro and the macro. It's above and below. We are a part of nature. So we are a microcosm of what's going on environmentally. And our gut microbiome is intimately connected to the soil microbiome. All of these things that are happening within are happening without on a climate environmental standpoint too. So we are talking more from a health standpoint, but keep in mind, everything I'm saying is actually happening on a global level too.
Yeah, and these are things that we talk about regularly with patients. It's not, this is why we say it's not just, you can't always just supplement your way to health. We have to explore your environment. And I think just a couple of things you didn't mention that I think are really important for our listeners is cookware.
Oh, yeah.
Cookware is really important to mention.
Teflon, the stick, the grease-free, the non-stick pans, that's definitely the case. Even the ovens that people use. What am I trying to do?
Yeah, the air fryers. The interior of that is completely.
Yeah, a lot of those.
Well, and I think most of them are non-stick almost completely through on
all
the inside.
All the non-stick stuff you're using in your kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah, massive category.
And even food storage. That's another big thing.
Plastic containers. Because this conversation, maybe you asked me the distinction between microplastics and PFAS. I don't know if that's on your roster, but I don't want to jump ahead.
No, it's okay if you want to go there. You want to steal my question? It's on the list, so you might as well talk about it.
Microplastics, which we've talked about in the pod before, but any plastic can degrade into microplastics, right? So think of all the plastic things that you're using in your life to store your food, have in your home, coming in contact with. When they're exposed to heat, light, over time, they can break down into microplastics. There's an overlap between this conversation of PFAS and microplastics because a lot of plastics are coated with PFAS. Yeah. And I've seen studies that show that the microplastics can actually enhance the toxicity of the PFAS. So it's sort of this chemical soup that can really amplify one another symbiotically.
Yeah. That did not sound appealing at all. Chemical soup. All I could picture
as a cocktail, a chemical cocktail.
Yeah, so let's brand this baby. Well, I mean, these companies definitely have.
Okay. So, and I do think that distinction is important to make, especially when we're talking about forever chemicals.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about what are the actual physiological implications of this. You know, you mentioned that we are a part of our environment and we are a reflection of what's happening there. But how does this manifest in us? What are the signs, the symptoms? Is this correlated with any research around people being diagnosed with specific health issues? How are we seeing this actually impact people's health? It's one thing to think about it, microplastics and different things. We've talked about this being stored in arteries and testicles, but forever chemicals, how does this impact us?
So keep in mind that the companies that put these into our economy and our world knew for decades that these were linked to health problems, and they did not report it and did not do anything different. And just a few years ago, the EPA fined DuPont like $600 million for not disclosing that these toxic chemicals were put in the environment, and the EPA didn't know either. The EPA has done some things to limit the amount of PFAS being produced, but it's minor, and it's basically small shifts we've made. But then we have to look at all the things from the past. It's really hard to clean these things up and contain it. So the health issues that these forever chemicals are associated with largely have to do with the immune system. It's linked to certain cancers, autoimmune problems, and another massive category is fertility. We know depending on the study that you cite, around 1 in 6 people struggle with infertility. That number is only growing. I've seen studies where there's been a 50% drop-off in sperm count in just the past decades. 50%.
Wow.
Then
in 10 years.
And I don't want to go off on like a sort of a fictional story and all of this, but there's a lot of like disturbing parallels when you look at something like The Handmaid's Tale and authoritarian states and the fertility drop-off. Again, that's a fictional.
Yes.
But if you look at Margaret Atwood and what she wrote as far as it's she was using real life and history also as these are cautionary tales for a reason. And I'm not fear mongering, because we have to be vigilant. Let's be proactive. What can we do to be a positive change on our individual level? And then how can we make a positive change by putting messages like this out in the world to allow people to be empowered? Because most people are so divorced from their own power. They don't even realize they have a choice with their wallet. They have a choice with their life. And the tools we're going to give you in this episode, a lot of them are practical things that anybody can do. So be encouraged. Anyway, so autoimmune issues, cancer, fertility issues, hormonal problems, those are the main things. And all of those things are on the rise. So we have to look at forever chemicals and other environmental toxins implication in these conversations. To say they're just idiopathic, to say we have a 50% drop in sperm count, to see we have 50 million Americans with an autoimmune condition, to see cancer is 1 in 2 or 3 people will have cancer in their lifetime. Yeah. We have to ask why. And these are the questions. These are what researchers are showing. Yes, this is why. This is why. And that's why our vote matters from a political standpoint, and our vote matters with the products we buy in our home, because we have to be talking about these and addressing these.
I wondered if you were going to mention that, because I think that's important for us to think about, is what can we do individually, but what can we do as a mass of people saying we don't want this anymore and we're not okay with it. Right. You mentioned a lot of diagnosis, or like you have like a very prominent condition that's cancer. We know that can be, it's a symptom. But are there anything that people should be aware of, or signs or symptoms that maybe you wouldn't think are PFA related, but we should be mindful to at least explore that this might be an issue? Any symptoms come to mind?
Well, when you look at the inflammatory cascade, or we talk about the inflammation spectrum a lot on this podcast and with patients, because these chemicals drive inflammation, they can be implicated in any inflammatory problem. Because remember, inflammation is not inherently bad. It's a product of the immune system. The immune system is trying to defend you and protect you. Well, what is it defending and protecting you against? It definitely can be, this could be a component to it for many people. And studies show that the recent study that looked at, they tested thousands of people and found that PFAS were found in 99% of people. 98 to 99% of people. That's almost everybody. It's in umbilical cord tissue. It's in placenta. It's in breast milk. It's coming out in urine. It's in newborn babies. I mean, this is how pervasive it is. So some other issues could be any inflammatory problems, so brain fog, fatigue, metabolic problems, something that I didn't mention. It's associated with type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol. And because it impacts so much of fertility in women and men, it impacts DNA methylation. And these methylation changes that these environmental toxins are making can actually be shown and expressed at the time of fertilization. Meaning when babies are conceived, they're seeing changes in their methylation because of what their parents were exposed to.
Wow.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, right. And we know that happens from a mental emotional side too, from intergenerational trauma. So if your trauma of your parents and grandparents, that shifts DNA methylation.
Yeah.
So mental health is physical health. As above, so below. We're actually seeing these changes from a mental emotional standpoint with collective trauma and personal trauma. And we're seeing it with environmental toxins. It's shift with DNA methylation. Again, it may sound like we're screwed, but the body's amazingly resilient. So
it is. Yeah, and those are protective there's some meant to be protective mechanisms that you come into the world primed or ready to be in the environment that you're in. So the fact that the body adjusts, psychologically to that, chemically to that, makes sense. Yeah. The picture isn't great, what we're coming into, but the fact that the body does that is not surprising.
Right. The body actually, you're right. It's an adaptive mechanism. But the problem is we just haven't adapted enough, because all of these things have changed in the past few decades
that we don't know, we can't process them literally.
Literally
because it's thousands of years of us living and our exposures, and then as over the last, what you'd say 200 years, I think we've had the biggest changes to our environment, but especially really since World War II.
Yeah, I mean the last 80, 90 years.
Yeah. Wild.
The 10-year statistic on sperm count is just blowing me away. It really is, because of the short time span and the significance of the decrease, right? It's just crazy.
Yeah.
And then you add in female fertility issues on top of that, and we're not probably far off from handmade. tail. So, just saying.
Let's not hope it doesn't happen exactly like that. If it's Gilead, your boy's going out. I'm running away. And I'm not going to Canada because they're worse.
Someone that I know is not getting a vasectomy because they may be needed in that scenario.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay.
Please talk about us more after this podcast
we could
ends.
talk more.
That's funny. I want to know who this is.
Yeah, we're gonna have this conversation afterwards. If you want to know, maybe we can petition Candace and like we'll raise money for PFA awareness. All right. Next question, Dr. Cole, because now that we've talked about these very scary, very real things, but we did talk about our body is designed to heal, and we know that we can overcome this. Mm-hmm. How do we know if we need to? So are there specific tests?
Yeah.
Is there a way to determine your PFA exposure rate?
Yes, there is. Hold on. All right, Brooke, sorry. I wanted to see if we were going. So cut that, Brooke. Want to say that one more time?
You want me to?
Yeah, repeat that. Sorry.
Rewind. Okay, so Dr. Cole, now that we talked a lot about these very real, very scary things, but we know that our body is designed to heal from, but we want to do our due diligence. Is there a way to determine your PFA exposure rate? Is there a way to determine what PFAS you even have, and how do we go about doing that?
Yeah, well, we run these labs for people around the world. So
I love that I ask these questions though, because I know the answer, but
so she's acting curious, but she's really just fishing. So the answer is yes, and we assess these on people's labs. So these typically urine and blood tests. It looks at chemical immune reactivity, toxins accumulated in the body. The term here is bioaccumulation, and we can measure what is bioaccumulated in the body through tests, through blood tests. Those are typically immunological, like antibody production, and also the chemicals themselves can be measured in the urine.
Yes, absolutely. So we can know exactly what we're dealing with, and that also helps us determine where the exposure might be coming from. So it's not just this, my world is killing me, but is there something very in particular in my environment and what I can control that I have a little bit more control over than just the entirety of the world?
And you can measure this, you can see the pre and post. You can kind of get a baseline and see these numbers improve over time by supporting methylation and detox, which we'll get into. Yeah,
and I think that's super encouraging, is that one, we can know what's happening, where it's most likely coming from, and then that leads to, well, what do you do about it? Are there diet changes? Does that even matter if it's environmental? Is it lifestyle? What do you see as the most beneficial before we jump into the supplement component? Like, our environment and nutrition are important. So lifestyle and nutrition wise, what do you see help with this?
So I think first and foremost, I want the mindset, and I'll let Candace talk about this more pointedly, but I do think that the energy in which you come into this shouldn't be frenetic and obsessive and negative, right? That's the antithesis of what we're talking about here, which I know these are supercharged topics that can become with definitely a frenetic energy, a nervous, anxious-ridden energy. I don't think that's good, right? And we want to check ourselves. So sometimes we just have to lean into this to be proactive, but lean into it to what we can handle, versus feeling like I have to do all the things for it to be good enough. You don't have to do all the things. And I'd rather somebody just lean into it and not be stressed versus do all the things and be super stressed and obsessive and get into a really bad mental health state. So that's my caveat here, but Candace can talk about it more in detail. The first thing that I would say is, yes, a nutrient-dense diet, a whole foods diet is definitely going to be congruent because it's supporting your body's detoxification pathways. The more we lower inflammation levels, the more we support detox pathways and the clearance of these things, the better. The more metabolically healthy you can be, the better to clear the stuff, because you're basically giving your body the raw materials it needs to be able to handle the stuff the best that it can. So fiber, for example, increasing fiber-rich foods in your diet can help push this stuff out more and clear this stuff out from a detox standpoint. Getting proper protein and getting blood sugar regulation and getting lean muscle mass. The more vibrant and thriving you are, the more your body can handle this. So think of that bucket analogy that we oftentimes will use. And if your bucket's overflowing and part of those ingredients that are contributing to the bucket overflow are forever chemicals, you have to do everything you can to empty that bucket. Food is contributing to that bucket overflow for some people, especially a lot of processed foods are in bags that use PFAS. So a lot of fast food, as I mentioned, the wrappers are using PFAS. So the more whole food you can be, inherently is going to be less PFAS as a general rule. And the nutrient density that they contain will help your body clear this stuff out more. So that is top. You all mentioned the cookware. So going for brands that are going the extra mile and showing you that they're PFAS free. I've talked about Our Place on the podcast. They've been a sponsor. And again, look, guys, if there is a sponsor in the podcast, it's because we recommend them to telehealth patients, or it's something that someone on my team loves, or I love, or all three of those things. So Our Place, Caraway, other brands like this, stainless steel, just like any brand of like good quality stainless steel cookware can be good. Looking at your air fryers, looking at your toaster ovens and getting PFAS-free products there. And then looking at your makeup and your personal care products and looking at brands that aren't using PFAS in manufacturing. I saw one study that looked at brands like MAC, the massive brand, right? And L'Oreal and Maybelline, and these all had PFAS in it.
They're all owned, I think, by the same parent company as well.
Right.
I'm pretty sure. Maybe not Maybelline, but definitely L'Oreal and MAC.
Yeah, right. So these companies, and Mac's statement when they were called out was that, well, we don't even knowingly use PFAS. So that just shows you maybe they aren't, because they're said, oh, we want to go the utmost from an environmental standpoint, right? Because they're all about, I think that's their angle more than the health side. It's more like the environmental. But it may be in the manufacturing facility. They're not even looking at these things. Mm-hmm. So it's just so ubiquitous. If you're not even, it's not just you're not intentionally using it. Are you third-party testing that your products aren't contaminated, even unintentionally? But as I mentioned, a lot of the waterproof stuff that they have PFAS, and there's just not enough education on this stuff. So looking at your care products, looking at your cooking products, do not heat things up in plastic containers. So if you're going to eat out of a plastic Tupperware container or something plastic or nonstick, do it at room temperature. So you're at least decreasing any contamination. But I would never heat something up in anything plastic.
Do we dare even mention to-go coffee cups? And cups. Yeah. I mean, you think about they're aligned with that
ceramic.
resistant.
You want to get ceramic. You want to go for brands that are PFAS free wherever you go. Now, are you going to be able to eliminate it at all? No. But I would say the things you're using the most, start making shifts. Work within your budget, what's practical for you, but start slowly saying, okay, as things wear out, as things are getting older, I'm going to start swapping these things out for brands that are showing me that they're free of these forever chemicals, because we have so much choice today of brands that are offering better for you options.
Well, and even so, my favorite is, and I don't know about you, Andrea, but a lot of my glassware that I use is vintage, right?
Yes.
So like vintage, I mean, Pyrex saw a flux where everybody started collecting it for a bit, but you can still find a lot of pieces that are, better quality than anything you'll find today. But I do that. Do you also?
100%. And I don't do vintage because I actually went out searching for it. I actually still have some of my great grandma's ceramic bowls, glass bowls, different things. I even had a stainless steel baking sheet that embarrassingly looked like it had been through war itself. But you know what? It was stainless steel. It was in cast iron. I have a cast iron skillet that I've had that's probably 100 years old, and I have these things and I use them. Mm-hmm. One, it's economical because, well, free, and then two, it's less toxic, and these are things that I've held on to and I'm rather fond of from an emotional standpoint too.
Both, so it's healing in both ways. I have a question though. I would love to hear both of your response. So when my babies were little, the BPA thing was just coming out. Do you remember this? This was,
our kids are the same age.
So a lot of the companies pivoted immediately and said, "Oh, our bottles are such and such, our whatever is BPA free." But what they didn't tell us was, just because they put that label on it, they actually replaced it with a more forever microplastic or whatever the heck it was that other letter something.
Yes, right. It's a subtype of
So when
BPA.
you're talking about this, being free, is there anything else people can do to sort of ensure that swap out isn't happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think brands that are going the extra mile, because you're right, there was a lot of greenwashing around the BPA era.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think the BPA free era. But today, there's brands that are definitely being intentional with the data that's out there today. They're not just doing it from a branding standpoint. They're really like I mentioned, Aeroplace and Caraway and a lot of clean beauty brands. I saw a study that Burt's Bees was tested in that study with MAC.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
And
sad.
Burt's Bees was free of BPA. And Burt's Bees said, "Oh, we're not surprised. We're intentional about that."
Yeah, but they weren't talking about it as much.
Right. And more and more brands are going to show, hey, we actually go the extra mile. This is important to us because we know it's important to you. Back to voting with our dollars. So there's a lot of brands out there. Like Burt's Bees is everywhere. They're in all the places.
They're the OG. They're the OB.
That's their original B.
It's really sad when we think about just how much we come in contact with. And so, like you said, we can make the choices we can make that are going to help us be able to limit these exposures, but there's still going to be some. So are there any supplements that you think that are across the board safe, or things that that we've worked with patients before that we know that they can use either short term or long term to help with their detox or methylation pathways, or helping the body clear these things more efficiently?
Yeah. Something I didn't mention before I get into supplements is water. Like, get a water filtration system. Like, I should have said that first and foremost.
drwillcole.com has an article about this.
Yeah, you could use a search engine. We'll put it in the show notes. Water filters options. There's many options. Reverse osmosis, activated charcoal binding, like a Berkey water filter, something like that. And these water filters will disclose, yes, they filter out PFAS, or no, they don't. Mm-hmm. And again, remember, it's not just about PFAS. This is the deep dive on this topic, but it's about a confluence of different environmental factors. So water filter for sure. Your water drinking, but also home systems too, when it's possible. And it's not just city water. Well water, spring water can be contaminated too, because it's in the soil and it's in the runoff of water. Mm-hmm. So don't think just because I live in the country, like I have well water and spring water, I get my water tested too. So this is, if you're off the grid or think you're off the grid, it's in the environment, my friend. So still test your water if you have spring in well.
Great point, Dr. Cole. Yeah. So supplements.
Remember, these forever chemicals impact DNA methylation. So supplementing with nutrients that support healthy methylation can help clear this stuff out. It can help with protect. It can be protective against birth defects, because this is impacting babies, specifically the nervous system of babies, because this is impacting childhood development. This is impacting childhood growth. It's impacting behavior in kids and adults. And then you think of all the behavioral, all the mental health issues, all the problems we're seeing in schools and in our culture, and you think of, what is the ripple effect of this? Like, we'll never know the full breadth of it, I don't think. But we know enough to know this is at least a piece of the puzzle. So folate and B12. Getting methylfolate, methylcobalamin. We have a product. If you're not a patient of ours, just go to drwillcole.com, go into the store or the shop, and the Art of Being Well line. We have the Art of Being Well supplement line. So it's called the methylator because it supports methylation. It's an integral part to detoxification. So that. Number 2 would be vitamin C. Vitamin C it's protective against liver damage, that these forever chemicals can damage the liver. So getting vitamin C, we have a vitamin C in the Art of Being Well line. I think it's very astutely called vitamin C. Just check it out.
It's brilliancy.
Brilliancy, sorry. But brilliancy. Check out the brilliancy. It's a wonderful compound of vitamin C.
Has a giant C in it. You'll find it.
You'll find it. Brilliancy. That was good. I was a part of that naming and then I forgot it.
Yeah,
It is really a great
We
name.
love that name. You like really made it sound less brilliant, but it is.
You know, most of the names, I'm pushing for the names, but yeah. I have so many good things. I forget the name. Sorry. The probiotic, I know it's called the probiotic, but this is a functional medicine clinical line for all of you pod listeners who aren't patients. But a cross-sectional study found that probiotic consumption, especially Lactobacillus bifidobacterium, can help with serum levels of PFAS, decreasing serum levels of PFAS. So probiotic, a good probiotic, and I would say curcumin. We have the curcumin has been shown as an antioxidant. We have an antioxidant blend too that also can be good with flavonoids and polyphenols. Vitamin D3, K2, it's needed. It acts as almost a pro-hormone, so it'd get your vitamin D levels optimized. And then chelators. B vitamins can act as mild chelators, but activated charcoal, something like that, zeolite, some binder, algae can be another binder to help clear this stuff out too. So those are my top supplement picks for this topic.
I love that. And I know we mentioned the shop, and I just want to point out this is intentional for our listeners. A lot of the things that we put in our shop, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I want that everybody to understand the intentionality of what we do is that we realize not everybody's going to be a patient, but if there's a product on there, it's because we believe in it and we know that you'll benefit from it, and it's been vetted. Not just the name, the name is definitely vetted when we're naming it, but the entirety of the product. So I really do encourage you that if you are looking for something that is going to really align with what you're hearing on this episode, those are things that I truly stand behind, and I know Dr. Cole does.
Oftentimes they come out of listeners.
That's what it is. This is for you.
What do you recommend for this? So we try to have just it all in one place.
Isn't the line called The Art of Being Well by Dr. Will Cole? Yeah, so just for you, pod listeners.
We made it for you guys.
We love you, and we want you to be PFA free. So before we shift over to Candace, because I know mental and emotional health, we're talking a lot about the physicality of this, the absorption of this, environmental components. But now that we've stressed you out, we need to talk about why you shouldn't stress out about it. Yeah. But Dr. Cole, what are your top 3 things that if someone was going to, it's going to be a little repetitive off of the things that we talked about, but just the practicality of it. 3 things that you would tell someone today that they should do.
I didn't mention getting your water. Oh, I guess I did. I said water tested for spring and well, but definitely get your water tested if you have regular public utility like city water. So get your water tested, I would say, is a good tip. We recommend different labs for patients and coordinate that with patients. But I can put in the show notes some options for people.
Yeah, I have stuff, Dr. Cole, that we can put in there.
On the clinical team, we'll put some show notes for you all if you want to do this on your own. Number 2, look at your food, increasing nutrient density, increasing fiber-rich foods to help support detoxification. All the things that I mentioned about slowly swapping out. Or look, if you can do it today and it's within your budget and this isn't overwhelming for you, don't slowly swap it out. Like, I don't want to limit what you can do. I'm just trying to be practical for the average listener out there, that I'm not saying, okay, to be healthy, you have to literally throw everything out and buy new things. But within your means, make swaps for the things I mentioned, personal care products, beauty products, kitchen products, and implement those supplements. And then get tested. If I would recommend anybody that wants a clinical perspective on this and all the other variables around it, because we talked about how this impacts your hormones and fertility, how this impacts your metabolism and things like cholesterol, how this impacts things like autoimmune problems and gut health. So if you have these issues, let's look at the PFA piece to that puzzle for you and all the other pieces too, which we cover in other mental health is physical health episodes. Yeah,
I love that, Dr. Cole. And I know this is kind of repetitive of what you said, but like, if you can switch it out, switch it out. I think that I'm at the age, I'm not going to speak for everybody else, that it used to be like a joke that if your husband bought you a vacuum cleaner for your birthday, it was a bad thing. dang if I don't ask my husband for like toxic free cookware for my birthday or for Christmas or, you know, just like that's something we budget for. Don't be intimidated by this. Think practically. These are things that you need. Ask for them and make the change.
Yeah. And even for your children too, that's something, you know, like children get money for birthdays or different things. It's okay. For me, I would say you have permission to use some of this towards a water filtration system or ask, you know, like as a collective family gift, this really is something that's important to us and will impact it. So there are ways to be resourceful there too, that you can,
you know, it's like those memes. That's a great point, Candace. How many of those memes where parents are going around turning on the lights going, I don't buy you anything. This is your light. Look at, like, I don't buy you anything. Look at this food. Look at this pantry. Like, I think that's something, and I try not to, you know, berate or put too much pressure on my kids to like be involved in this, but we have conversations and I say, I know you're going to vending machines at school. I know that your friends' parents are probably not buying non-toxic cookware, but it's all the more important that what I can control in our family, we're controlling. And something that we can control too, that can be a free or relatively low cost, Candace, is our mental health. And what do you take away from this? Because I know me and you have many conversations out of this and we're like, oh boy. So, but what would you say to a listener today that when we're talking about this topic, what's something that you would want them to integrate?
Yeah, I think the number one thing, and Will, you sort of alluded to it, is the mindset around tackling this particular topic in your life or just your health in general, and connecting how powerful your mindset is to that process. So for example, you know, you were saying you see people that get so stressed about this endless amount of perfecting you could do in your home or, you know, anywhere that you're out there. So I think really adopting an empowered mindset around this and not discrediting how important that is, right? Because even if you go through and you're like, there's always something I can be doing, or I can always be doing better. There's ways to really say that are very different, right? Like you could say the same message is really, oh, it's never enough. It's never going to be enough. Or you look at the chemicals being poured in places and you're like, oh, it's never going to stop. I'm never going to be able to mitigate that. As opposed to looking and saying, I every day am in alignment with choices that are helping my body to process this exposure. And, you know, just you can even hear the shift in my voice, even saying those two things. And I'm just talking objectively about them. So really understanding that there's a connection there is number one. But practically speaking, in the mental health space, there is so much you can be doing to support your inflammation levels, to be supporting all the things that those detoxification processes. So I'm going to share two with you that are really practical and really help with mindset, sleep, all those things. So the first one really is Yoga Nidra that I want to talk about today a little bit more in depth. Yoga Nidra just means sleep yoga. And my friend, you know, my friend Andrew Huberman.
If you haven't listened to that podcast, can we give that podcast a shout out?
We're just friends.
Yeah, just
you guys
friends.
Don't know that? We're friends.
Maybe lovers.
So he coined the term, or he's claiming to have coined the term, non-sleep deep rest. And the reason why he coined that term is because there are lots of people that don't want to do anything that has to do with yoga, and anything, the word nidra just sounds weird to them, so they're not going to do it. Right. But studies have shown that, you know, doing this practice, which this is so freely available on YouTube. These practices are really supportive for teaching the body how to get into rest state. So this is actually, if you go deeper into it, it's like delta waves, and your body is in this stage where you're achieving meditative results, but you are just listening to a prompt, right? So for people that have lots of thoughts like Andrea, so that's why I'm gesturing over to Andrea, following these kinds of practices, they're able to just listen and then progressively release tension, stress out of your body, but then you're building resilience in the body that you're able to handle the daily onslaught of stressors, things like that. At the same time, you're teaching your body, which a lot of people struggle with, being able to fall asleep, stay asleep. You're doing these daytime practices. It doesn't matter if they're morning, evening, or whatever, but if you do them over time, what they're showing is that they can really impact the ability to fall asleep, stay asleep. And then in the short term, if you're using these just to mitigate stress, there's real spikes, like there's a real return to a healthy level of dopamine in the body, and improved performance of the sensory motor cortex, which is really just, you need those things to live, guys. So that's
So if you want to
You being the
live,
best you.
Yeah, and going a little bit beyond that, there are this practice, the non-sleep deep rest, yoga nidra. You can look up either, but there are studies around this and more studies happening. So one small study, I think it was in India, about 70 participants over 3 months. They looked at all kinds of biomarkers. What they found over time was a reduction in blood pressure, an increase in insulin sensitivity, and on blood work, a true reduction in inflammatory markers. Wow. So when we're talking coming back to this larger discussion, how can the body manage these things? This is exactly where the mental health component comes in. The other one is your favorite, Dr. Cole. We talk about somatic exercises, right? And so for these, there's also huge inflammatory impacts. One study was done on people with just chronic pain, which inflammation is so tightly tied to, right? They did these practices over a year with regularity, just these gentle movements that I'll share a little bit about. They saw an 86% reduction in the amount of pain those people experienced on a pain day.
Wow.
Can you imagine going 86% lower? So
That's significant.
yeah. And these are things that can be done. My favorite, one of the people that I'm studying with for somatic work, one of the things she says is do this in the laziest way possible, which is such a leap for people. And, that's why I talk about this over and over again. But that idea of embracing the lazy path for some of this stuff is so, so important. So these somatic exercises at the core, they're gentle exercises. They're meant to reduce stress over time because they do like a systemic, integrated or integral. What's the word I'm thinking of when you go like step by step into something?
Integral sounds good to me.
Over time, gentle process. So that's kind of what you want to do.
Incremental?
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking?
Incremental.
Incremental?
When you're taking something out over time in a very thoughtful way. And that's actually how I see in practice when you guys are talking about nutrition practices, any kind of detoxification support, anything like that. That's how we approach everything here clinically. So these somatic gentle exercises, things like there really are simple movements like rocking, squeezing, like squeeze. Just do with me.
Tension hold.
Yeah,
like,
tension hold.
Okay, I'm squeezing my squeezing my hands,
right?
clenching my hands,
and then just releasing.
Okay.
And you may notice there was more tension there than you maybe even thought if you're paying attention. So things like that is just a somatic practice. Dance can be drumming. Why? Because if you are connecting to the movement and doing it with the intention of releasing the stress or that it's good for you, then it really is an umbrella that's kind of wide. It can count as a somatic practice. And over time, it's going to reduce your inflammation, take all that stuff out that you're experiencing. So
that's something that I see in a lot of apps that we recommend for patients, like these things that you don't even, if you need a guided sort of approach to it, they're like, you don't have to just do it on your own. There are free resources and then other lower cost resources.
Yeah, and this is what I teach my children. So, what do I teach my kids in the world about emotional health? One, I teach them awareness, I teach them that everybody that they're encountering is running a program and you're pretty much interacting with their program and their truth self is somewhere in there. And then, but more importantly, it's like that gives you a cognitive way to process the world. Yeah. But what's the true way that we process? It's through our emotions. So whether we're talking, my screen is doing all kinds of fun things over here, just so you guys know. When we're processing emotions as well in that same way, that's where the power is. We have to be able to not just understand this stuff cognitively, but to really get it down in the body.
Yeah, in the body. And when we say somatic, it is body work. It's using your body as your medicine.
Yes.
Through movement.
Yep. Soma's the Greek.
Yeah.
Right?
Soma, yeah. Wow.
This is fantastic. I love this episode, and I think it was a great way for us to talk about that. And if you are someone that loved what we talked about, I don't mean to be repetitive, but this is how we help people every day.
Yeah.
And it's something that we feel really passionate about. We talked about the lazy, and it really resonated with me. The team has been making fun of me lately. They said I've entered my soft era, and it's literally, I've done this for almost 15 years now. Nobody wants perfection from you. I promise if you choose to work with a functional medicine practitioner, they should be choosing not the lazy, we'll call it soft.
The light.
The light, soft approach. So don't enter any of these podcasts or watch our material or read our material and think we're looking for perfection from you, because we're not. And I just when you said lazy, I was like, oh, my soft era. Like that's where I'm at with with that. So.
Yeah. And the truth is, you make more progress in your soft era.
Yeah.
You really
Yeah.
do. I think when you step back from it, people don't like to admit that. But, you know, how many people have you talked to on your podcast, Will, that they've pushed hard with their health, with whatever,
Yeah.
and then they hit a hard stop.
Yeah.
And they needed to enter their soft era by force.
Yeah.
So
That's why we say you can't heal a body you hate. You can't shame your way into wellness. You can't
Yeah.
obsess your way into health. That is this path that you can blend the science and the art. The art is this stuff. The art is the softness. The art is the lightness. So thank you guys for doing this.
yeah, this is fun.
If you want to learn more about our clinical work, all the things we're talking about, we have it in the show notes on the podcast page, as well as all the other stuff at drwillcole.com. Have fun. We'll see you next time.